You got it. Ah, that was amazing. Anybody else feel like that when she said the third cup of joe to get you out the door? I was like, oh. Or to get you through your day. I was like, oh. I don't know anything about that at all, at all. So I have with me today the wonderful, fabulous Tom McAuliff. And so Tom and I have been having lots of conversations. And one of the pieces that has really been alive for us is, did everyone know here that August is Make-A-Will month? Now, some of us might need to breathe on that, right?
That's not on your calendar?
August is Make-A-Will month. And it really got me thinking. So Chris and I, we've been together for 20 years. As a queer couple, you know, you would think that we would be on top of things like wills and medical directives, because in some places, people aren't going to let me in if she's in the hospital, right? We carry our marriage license with us wherever we go, whenever we travel, just to make sure that I can prove to people that we are actually married. And so you would think, I mean, I'm organized enough that I actually find the marriage license and pack it whenever we travel, but we have not actually made a will, or done our medical directives, or done any. Now, let me be clear, we've had lots of conversations about all this. Anybody in here in the same boat? Like, lots of conversations, but have we actually done it? And it's real. I was so fascinated by that. So of course I went to Tom, because like he does advisement, financial advisement, like that's his world. And I said, you know what I do, right? I show up here with you with the things I'm in the middle of. And I said, I can't be alone in this, right? Am I the only person who doesn't do this?
Many of us. Many of us.
So we thought we would talk a little bit about the spiritual perspective on navigating end-of-life choices. And I know that even just saying end of life, are we having any kind of physiological reaction? That's the song was so perfect when Deborah said the song before you talk is breathe. So I'm just going to invite us all to breathe into this, because we are really going to look at it from the spiritual perspective, right? And there are nuts and bolts, but we're going to be looking at it from spiritual perspective.
And I have an embarrassing moment. Next time you have a nightmare.
Just breathe, Tom, just breathe.
Whoops.
I am just going to say I'm glad he realized it at the beginning of the talk.
Oops.
I love you. We get to hold each other, right? We get to hold each other no matter what's going on. We get to hold each other. So we thought we'd just sort of highlight, there's a lot that goes into end-of-life choices, right? We're talking about wills, we're talking about trusts, we're talking about beneficiaries, we're talking about executors, we're talking about medical directives, we're talking about celebrations of life after you're, are you overwhelmed yet? I'm overwhelmed, right?
That's a lot.
It is.
It's a big task. It's a culmination of a life, right? It's looking forward and looking back at the same time. And who am I, and why am I here, and what am I leaving? Breathe into that. Mm-hmm. This is a big circle of life, and there's a lot of tools, but mostly it's the energy, about surmounting that energy and owning it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of challenges that we face as we're trying to navigate end-of-life choices. And so here's my list, right? the size of the estate. Perhaps it feels too big, perhaps it feels too small. It doesn't matter the size of the estate, but we get caught up in the size of our estate. I found a statistic that said that 62% of all Americans believe that a will is important, and only 32% of Americans actually have one. Perhaps we're ignorant of the options. So this is part of Chris and my challenge, right? That we're ignorant of what some of our options are, about what we can do. Perhaps we're overwhelmed by the options. There's financial costs that could come into play as you try to put these pieces together, and that can also feel like an obstacle. This is the big one. It's just too much work. Right? I got to carve time out for this. I actually have to put things in order. I have to pull all of my quote unquote assets together. I have to kind of organize. I have to sit on the phone with the bank maybe, right? How long am I going to be on hold with customer service as I do some of these things? And then the big one, well, for Chris and I, right, it's just, oh, there's plenty of time. We're young. There's so much time. We have so much time.
You know, this is also something people put off because it's in the future, right? It's not something that's going to have an immediate benefit for you. And I know from my own experience, it's like, I'm working hard enough all week long already. You know, do I want to do this on, Wednesday night or Saturday? So you put it off, and you put it off. Full disclosure, I have a will. It's probably not been looked at in 15 years. I've restarted it a number of times. It's all right. I'm busy. There's time.
Anybody in here have a will that they did like 20 years ago and haven't pulled it out and looked at it yet? Yeah. Right? And then the big one, right? Where I really think all of these other pieces that we're talking about are actually just symptoms of the bigger challenge, which is that as we step into these things, we're facing our own mortality. We're facing death. We're having to sort of come right up against what I would call worst case scenario, that we are dead, right? And that's a really challenging place to step into, particularly if you're feeling very alive. Right? If you're feeling very alive. It can also be really challenging if you're having a health challenge. It can also be very challenging too, because that you're on this edge of something that you're navigating, and the reality of it is so hard and so painful that actually taking care of some of these pieces just feels a bridge too far. So I did pastoral care in the hospital setting, and I cannot tell you how many people I interacted with that did not have so many of those pieces, particularly the medical directives, that just create so much trauma for the families. And I really want you to hear that. It's trauma for your loved ones. If you're in the hospital suddenly and nobody really knows what your wishes are, it is traumatic for people to have to figure it out. It's painful because the responsibility then falls on them, and they carry that on with them.
There's a lot of work that goes into settling a state. I have a current situation where my client had a trust, had gone to the trouble of hiring an attorney and building the trust and a beautiful binder. Gorgeous, one of the best I've ever seen. But she never put her assets in the trust. And so now her heir is fighting with the courts and the attorney and trying to wrestle this into the trust after the fact. Oh my goodness, it's 2 months already and it's only just beginning. So, take the first step, but also take the next step, and take the next step too.
So, the spiritual perspective I'd like to invite us into is that legacy planning, it's not about endings. I know it feels like it is, but what if we are holding it as it's a continuation of our values, our passions, our care, and our love. Because one of the things that we believe is that our time here in this, human flesh piece is transitory, but the essence of who we are is eternal. So are you getting caught up in this? Or can you embrace the eternality, the continuation of your beingness? And that happens through your legacy planning. Can you feel that? Can you feel that even though you may be physically gone, if you have engaged in this process of legacy planning, then the continuation of your love and your care and your values is happening in the world. It's still alive. And that piece, I think, is really, really important.
That is truly the spiritual practice of financial planning, that it's really not about us, it's about the people that we affect and how are we making that impact. Because anyone here not want to make an impact, not want to live a purposeful life? No, we all want to live a purposeful, impactful life. And money tends to be the way that we have immediate impact. So from a spiritual point of view, money kind of is essential. There's all sorts of unity teachings around prosperity that elucidates that money is an essential expression of the goodness, the God that we experience in life. So why not bring that same awareness to your practice in financial work, that you are expressing the essence of yourself?
So we would call this the fifth principle, right? Where we're actually living into our principles. We're actually activating them in time and space. We're actually bringing them forward, right? So we're here to assist to our true divine nature to live, move, and demonstrate God consciousness in the world. You can change the word God to anything that works for you. Love consciousness, grace consciousness, whatever works for you. But that's what we're here to be and do. That's what Unity believes. That's what I believe. And so if I am here to live, move, and demonstrate that love consciousness, that compassion consciousness, that joy consciousness, then how am I actually going to activate it in time and in space? What is that going to look like? And so this is what, when you step into legacy planning, what you are doing is taking care of those you love. My great aunt passed away, and she lived in Florida. I was the one who was down there packing up all of her belongings. I was the one sort of figuring everything out. And there were pieces that she did do, and there were pieces that she didn't do. But the biggest piece she did do was she arranged for her own burial plot. She arranged for the person who was going to do the service for her. She arranged all of that ahead of time. So all I had to do was make one phone call, and a whole series of things got activated. And I did not, in my grief, I did not have to sit there and figure things out. When my dad passed away, they did not have all of these pieces in order. And there's my stepmom in the midst of her grief trying to pick out urns. And I mean, there are ways that you can demonstrate for the people who you love, how you care for them. And the big one, too, is supporting what you value, right? Whatever your estate is, whatever that looks like, there is no estate too small to not think about how you want to handle the end, quote unquote. My aunt, old school, she had stickers all over everything. Like I'd pick up things and there'd be a little sticker and it would say Deanne, all right? And I'd pick up something else and it would say Rachel, right? And so it made it very simple. Nobody could argue. My family was like, well, I want that. And I'm like, sorry, there's a sticker on this sucker and it's going there. I am. So it obliterated all the arguing. I mean, I have witnessed what happens when people pass away and what can erupt within family structures and family dynamics. Simplify that for everyone.
Yeah, we've all heard stories about the trauma of a passing and the lack consciousness that arises. It's just horrifying to witness families break up over money, especially when that was not what the gift was meant to be. Yeah, sad.
And in our teaching, this is about releasing victim consciousness. You're not a victim of your own death. Everyone take a breath here, right? You're not a victim of the fact you're going to die. We're all going to die. Look around at each other and say, we're all going to die. We're all going to die.
Even me?
Even you, Tom.
Even me?
We're all going to die. So we're not a victim of that. It's not something that's happening to us. It is a process of life itself, that things rise and fall and rise and fall and are born again in a new iteration and in a new way. So can you release the idea that death is something that's going to happen to you? We talk about this a lot, that victim consciousness is you think things are happening to you. What if you were able to step into the awareness that this is happening for you and your values and your family and your community? What if we can flip that on its head? And I know, I can feel it in the room. Everyone's like, what is she talking about? Death is for me. Not because I think we're going to go to some place in heaven and live in paradise forever and ever. That's not Unity's model, right? But because we are eternal consciousness. Eternal consciousness. There is that which we are that can never be hurt, harmed, endangered, or die. So can we embrace that and just have fun while we're in the skin suits? Mm-hmm. Right? Just have fun while we're here in time and in space.
That's a big one, right? The skin suit, this practicing, being human out here. What is the expression? How do we make it work? It's a lovely little dance we get to do. What a gift.
It is a gift, actually, and we don't look at it that way. How many people in here think of their death as a gift? After this talk, how many people are going to think of their death as a gift?
What a blessing.
Okay. So remember, we're just working these principles, right? We don't have to agree with them right away. We don't have to, but the idea is we're engaging with them. We're engaging with them. And of course, when you actually think about it, you can feel how legacy planning is actually about empowerment. You're not a victim. You're empowered. You're empowered to make choices, and this is what Debbie read, the I am wise, that wisdom is something that we have. Even if you don't feel like you know what on earth you could do, there are ways that you can activate your wisdom, always available, always accessible, that can support you in making these choices, in discerning what is going to be best for you. And then the last piece is about living from a place of generosity. So this is that lack consciousness, which I have shared. The world is in the state it's in right now because we don't think there's enough. We don't think there's enough oil. We don't think there's enough whatever, right? We don't think there is enough. When we inhabit the consciousness of generosity, we are literally inhabiting it for the entire planet simultaneously. It's not just here, because there is no just here. There's only one power, one presence. We're not separate from it. So whatever isn't alive within us is alive everywhere. So fear, resistance, lack, if that's alive in you, then that is going to be showing up in the world that we live in. Now, is it your sole responsibility to eradicate lack consciousness? No, in the world, but you can do the work here. Yeah? You can do the work right here.
There's a beauty in generosity that's beyond belief. If you dig into it, the generosity from the generative impulse, from the Creator having given us this gift of life, and the circle, like I mentioned earlier, of life and generosity is how it gets to be expressed. It's probably, in my mind, the hottest thing I find in my financial planning work is how can I engender generosity? How can I inspire generosity? Money can be very a moat, and I want to build bridges with money. So that means we want to build legacy. We want to build charitable gifts. We want to build anything that's going to help express that goodness that we're born with. Yeah, if you want to get me going, get me on a generosity topic.
So I found this quote from Winston Churchill, which I just loved, which is, "We make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give." Right?
Amen
and
to that.
That's the piece, life. And I would even, this was a quote, but I would make that a capital L, right? I would make that like a principle of life. We make life. We are creators. There's no God out there waving a magic wand around, right? There's no Santa Claus God in Unity that's just gonna whoop, right? We believe that we are the place where these principles live and get to express. So life lives as us. And it is all about circulation, right? And we say this, giving is receiving. Well, what does that really mean, right? When we step into legacy planning, we're really stepping into that practice of not hoarding, again, lack consciousness, got to keep it safe, got to keep it here, but understanding that there's a natural flow. There's a natural flow and movement. Money wants to be spent. We all know this, right? Because we spend it, right? Money wants to be spent, but that's because it represents energy in the world. It doesn't want to be stuck away in a closet or in a shoebox. I know who you are, right? It wants to be shared. It wants to be part of the giving and the receiving.
Some of the saddest stories I've heard, you might have seen these too, are the people that saved and saved and saved and saved, and they lived in squalor, and they would not take gifts from strangers or even family members, and when they pass away, they leave $1 million estates. That they could have done so much goodness. They could have seen the goodness that they were going to leave. You know, the heirs in this particular story I'm thinking about had a university in mind, so the university benefited. But imagine if this woman had made that gift while she was alive and had seen the students that she had impacted. How gorgeous that would have been.
And I want everyone to really just know that if you don't have a will and you do die, the state steps in. Take that in for a second, right? The state steps in.
They got a plan.
And they make it all happen, and your folks have no control over that. So not having a will means that you are inviting someone else to make decisions for you.
Can I drop my quote in?
Please.
It didn't make the slides. Helen Steiner Rice wrote a poem, The Gift of Life, and this is just the last verse of it. All of what we give away enriches us from day to day. For not by getting, but in giving is found the lasting joy of living. And what a gift, not only to the people we gift to, but to ourselves. That think about this, when you've been kind to someone, just a smile at someone, doesn't that open your heart? Doesn't that make you more connected to yourself, to your own spirit? When you've taken your estate and you've decided this is, what my legacy is going to be, Unity and Marin. This is how, look at this room. And how blessed we have been, and you're going to talk about this, aren't you? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I've been talking the last 2 weeks, if you want to catch the 2 talks that I did on intentional living and then abundant living, which are available on our YouTube channel. But 2 of the main core ideas there are about compassion, gratitude, being generous of yourself. That is part of what it means to live intentionally. That is part of what it means to live into an abundant life. And I shared the journey of all those Olympians last week, which people really seem to love that talk, so that's awesome. And they are living in that place of gratitude. Gratitude for their gifts, gratitude to represent their country, gratitude for the legacy that they are a part of. What they value in this world lives onward. Yes? So that's not just for Olympians. That's for us. They are us, right? I mean, I know Simone Biles feels like she's superhuman, but she's actually just like us, right? We get to live into those same things. So I wanted to just share a little bit of the power of legacy giving. And this, for me, is truly where your values get to be extended beyond your own lifetime, is in where it is that you are going to share of all of the good that you have accumulated, that you're holding on to, how your giving becomes something that actually isn't just about you, but it is about the next generation. And I love this quote: the true meaning of life is to plant trees under whose shade you do not expect to sit. And who immediately comes to mind for me is Reverend Candida Wright, our founding minister, who did a number of things that were not about her, but about the future of Unity in Marin. When they brought Richard Manti in and they got rid of the hymnals and they switched to modern music, and all the older community hated it. I want to be really clear. They hated the fact that they lost their hymns because it was part of their practice. It was part of how they understood coming to Sunday service. And yet they still came every Sunday. And they didn't complain about it. And they supported Richard because they knew that it wasn't about them. It was about the next generation. That the community wasn't going to grow without there being a different approach. And so even though it wasn't their preference, they supported it for something bigger than them. And it is in that phase where we exploded. Right? We exploded in terms of our growth. And then the other thing that Candida did was she left a legacy for us in her will. And I just want everyone to look around at our sanctuary. I want everyone to think about our beautiful campus and the meditation garden and the playground and our parking lots that every minister in Unity that I talk to is very jealous of how much parking we have.
We are the bomb.
So we bought this campus by bidding at an auction. The community raised $1 million to bid at the auction, which is amazing. And then when the bidding ended and we had won the building, we bought it for $1.25 million. Where was that other $250,000 going to come from? And in that, I think it was like that week, right?
Yeah.
We get the notice that Candida left $250,000 to Unity in Marin.
She was a light. Some of us still remember Candida. She was a light right up to the very end, and still is a light. You feel it in this room when you walk in.
This is her legacy. Can you feel that? This is her legacy. The next generation. We were able to grow and expand because of her vision, her foresight, her following through on what she valued, on what was important to her, on what her passions were. And because she did that, we get to sit here today. And so the invitation, I talk about this when we do Earth Day, 7 generations. 7 generations. If every choice you make is to benefit 7 generations from now. You should see my garden. It looks awesome, by the way. I'll bring in pictures. But 7 generations, not for me, but for what's coming afterwards. That becomes what our legacy actually is. And can you feel how Candida gets to live on? She gets to actually live on here with us.
And that is a total practice. That's definitely something that is important to get your mind around, to release that which is self-limiting, to open up to the fuller expression, just to be in the heart space. This is for us all. It's for us all.
Yeah, and for the world, because what we do here anchors the world too, right? So that's the piece, getting beyond just you and really understanding that there is no you, there is only one. And how do you want to choose from that consciousness? So in your bulletin, there's a help me out, people. Insert, thank you. There's an insert, and we're interested to know if there's any specific information that the community would like to know about how to step into being very conscious about legacy planning, whether it's about wills or beneficiaries or choosing an executor. All of these pieces are so important as we step in. And for those of you who, like Chris and I, might think like, we're too young to have to worry about this. Or what we also say is, well, we're the beneficiaries of each other's stuff, so if something happens to one of us, it's not a big deal. What if something happens to both of us? Then what happens? Everything we have goes into state probate. And I can already envision what that would mean, right? In my family and in everything else. Oh, take a breath with me, everyone. Because this is like, it touches all these very, very tender spots for all of us. Whether you have a will or a trust and you haven't looked at it in a while, well, pull it out, brush it off, right? If you think your estate is too small, think again. If you have a car, that's worth something. If you own a home in Marin, we all know that's worth something, right? So let's take this into a time of meditation. We're going to just sort of sit with whatever got stirred up for you. This is probably some of the most powerful work you can ever do, is to consciously choose what the end of your life is going to be. What it's going to feel like, what it's going to look like, how you want to support and love your family in that very, very, very hard time, how you want to support and give back to the causes, to the communities that you love. This is about gratitude, an opportunity to express your gratitude. So let's breathe together. I'm just welcoming the awareness of that place, that space that can never be hurt, harmed, endangered, or die. That eternality that we actually are, and perhaps you understand that as stillness. Perhaps you understand that as peace. Perhaps you understand that as your breath. Perhaps you understand that as just the grace that is always a thought away, a breath away. And as we rest in this awareness that love is everywhere present, as we rest in the eternality that is our true nature and our true name, in this moment, the invitation is to just sit with whatever the obstacles seem to be to you. Whether it's time, whether it's overwhelm, whether it's not knowing enough, whether it's knowing too much. What is it that is preventing you from engaging with this powerful moment of transition? In Unity, we call death a transition because we don't believe that we actually die. We believe that we are transitioning into another state of consciousness. How do you want to up-level your understanding of that? How do you want to navigate what is right now? So let's just rest here for a few minutes in the silence. Just welcoming that inner wisdom, that deep inner knowing. This is the space and the place from which we want to live and breathe and have our very beingness. This space of openness, this space of stillness, this space that is limitless potential. There is nothing to fear, false evidence appearing real. We are eternal beings, and we get to bless this time here on this planet, in these bodies, with a generous heart, with a practice of gratitude and appreciation, knowing that everything we need, we already are. So the invitation is to allow this to continue to speak and guide and support us always. And gratitude for this, knowing the innate wisdom that we all are and our capacity to be that wisdom in practice, time, space, decisions, choices, discernment. I do give thanks. And so it is. And so it is. Thank you, everybody. Can we give Tom some love here?